basement membrane. So how are they going to get their nutrition? Because they have to get nutrition, right, so that they can divide and grow and live. So I love this is a good explanation of that. Okay, I have this big cookie, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to give you a bite, and then you're going to pass it to her, and she's going to take a bite, and then we're going to go, and then all the way back up in there, there's not going to be any more cookie left, and so those cells are going to probably die, and that's what happens to our skin. So the surface of our skin, for instance, is squamous epithelium. And it doesn't have, there's no nutrition in that skin. It's sloughing off all the time. It's protective, and that's part of the design of epithelia. Like say for the epithelia that lines the mouth, that we want that epithelia to be able to be shed quickly because it's going to protect against abrasion. The lining of the vagina during childbirth. You know, if the epithelia didn't shed, I mean, we would have a lot of trouble. You know, so this property of epithelia being its upper layers is very important. Even in the intestine, we're sloughing off these epithelial lining all the time. And if we didn't do that, that's part of what keeps us healthy. It keeps us new and kind of keeps those tissues lively. And but this is a problem of epithelia, is that the only, you know, the cells closest to the basement membrane get the most nutrition, have the faster dividing. If this is a stratified layer of epithelia where we have many layers of epithelia, the layers that are closest to the basement membrane are going to divide faster. And this is also part of what happens in our life. And we'll kind of look at some of that. So these are just some of the functions of epithelium. They form selective barriers, and their lining and the surfaces, like the skin. Transfer of substances. We have epithelia that is absorptive. We have epithelia that is, oh, I left my notes on my desk. We have that is, well, let me see, I might have it here. Excretion glands. We have epithelia that is mucus producing. That is all produced in the epithelia. So it's very, it's a release of products. Sometimes the product is released like an endocrine, even an exocrine gland where it's going through a duct. It's still that epithelial is going to be part of that. So this is, again, this classification. So when we classify epithelium, we classify simple, so we could have simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and simple transitional. Transitional means that it is different as different types of epithelium, like the bladder, for instance, is a good example of transitional epithelium. And the bladder, a bladder is about this big and about that flat if it's empty. But I think we all have experiences of bladders that get to be like this big. So this is transitional epithelium that can go back to its small size and then become large again. So simple would be a single layer. Stratified would be just what it says, stratified layers of epithelia. Columnar, cuboidal, or squamous are the three types. And then we have simple or stratified, and then we also have pseudo-stratified. And sometimes the epithelium is it's single layer, but because the nuclei in the cells are at different levels in the cell, it will look like it is stratified. Because when you look at epithelia under the microscope, you're going to see that you look for the nucleus, and then it gives you an indication of these types. So we can have epithelia that is simple, stratified, or pseudo-stratified. And that epithelia is made it is either columnar epithelia, cuboidal, or squamous. Squamous means flat, by the way. And we have next week in the skull, we'll study that. You'll have that word again. Any questions? This can be kind of confusing, and we're going to talk a little, I'm going to kind of go through each of these bit by bit again. Yeah. It would just be transitional epithelium, whether it's simple or stratified. Transitional would be stratified by its very nature, because it's transitional in the layer. So it would have to be a stratified if it was transitional. And is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So here are some examples of this, of epithelia. And I know on epithelia, it's almost like, oh gosh, I can't wait till we get through with epithelia. But you have to understand this, because it'll make understanding epithelia, I think, will make when you study physiology a little bit easier too, because these are the workhorses of our body. So, okay, so this would be an example of simple squamous, very good for diffusion. So it's found in the lungs and in the blood vessels. Why?
Oxygen.
Right, because we're going to diffuse gas through the alveoli of the lungs into the plasma of the blood, eventually get to go to the red blood cell. We're going to need the capillary beds, the blood vessels, our capillary beds are going to be diffusing. They've got to diffuse oxygen out to those tissues. So this is, and the other thing that we're going to talk about after we looked at this, we're going to talk about junctions. So the epithelia has different types of junctions, and these junctions between the cells also give you a clue as to their function. I mean, the junctions have specific types of jobs. Stratified squamous. So this would be an example of what stratified squamous would look like. It's flat, but many layers. And the upper layer, that is going to be essentially dead tissue, like you would find on your skin, or here in the pharynx is what they're showing an example of. And here is transitional in the bladder. And you can see it, when you look at it, you can't really classify it. It doesn't look right because it's transitional. So, and then here is simple. Simple, what is the word? If you see the word simple before the type of epithelia, what does that tell you?
One layer.
One layer. Very good. Okay, so here would be simple cuboidal. And here is simple columnar that we're going to see inside the intestines. This is mucus producing. Why do we need a lot of mucus in our intestines? Well, we need a lot of lubrication to get all that stuff through there. and then we have stratified columnar, and you would find this in the urethra. And then pseudostratified ciliated columnar. Okay, so, oh wait, you mean some of these cells could have cilia. Yes, some of them can have cilia. And this would just be, cilia is just this part of the cell, it's a beading, it's sort of here in the nasal passages, we have cilia. And mucus, we have a lot of mucus producing cells in here, columnar. And the cilia are going to be helping to, clear debris, moisturize, warm the air, and kind of we have cilia inside the fallopian tubes to help the oocyte as it moves on through the fallopian tubes. So here would be some examples. Filtration inside the kidney, and this would be, and here this would be a simple squamous epithelium. Here is the connective tissue, here's the basement membrane, here's the blood vessel, and here's the simple squamous with the nucleus. Secretion, very important. We have these membranes, serous membranes, and especially in the peritoneum, and we have these serous membranes sort of really all over the body. We have a lot of fluid being produced. That parietal pleura produces quite a lot of fluid, and that's the type of cell that would. And here would be a simple cuboidal. This would be secretion and absorption. So, and these are different places where you might find this type of tissue. This would be the lumen of a duct. Let's see, what are we looking at? This is in the pancreas. So this would be, these are pancreas cells. And the simple cuboidal epithelium lining one of the pancreatic duct. And this is going to be secreting pancreatic enzymes into the small intestine. So this is a cuboidal is secretion and absorption. So this would be a simple columnar, non-ciliated. Non-ciliated, but we have microvilli, and this is because it is in the small intestine. So these cells, so depending upon the cell, there are whatever the job that the cell has to do, it's going to have those special structures as well. So like the microvilli is part of the increase of surface area of the small intestine. And here would be a mucus goblet cell within this columnar, and this is a mucus-producing cells. We have a lot of those goblet cells. They're sort of everywhere. And again, you can see the basement membrane, the blood supply. And then ciliated columnar epithelium. You would find here is showing you in the uterine tubes with the cilia that helps to beat the ovum as it moves through the fallopian tubes. You can see the nucleus here. Again, connective tissue here. So it's not, you're not always going to see it, so it looks real pretty like this artist drawing. But you can see that this, you can see the connective tissue. Here is the basement membrane. Here, there are the columnar cells, and you can see the microvilli on top. And here are some other places where you might find ciliated columnar epithelium. The bronchioles of the respiratory tract, paranasal sinuses. This is kind of interesting. I don't think I ever noticed that before. Central canal of spinal cord, and ventricles of brain. Now this kind of makes sense, but this it's interesting. So we'll talk about that when we study the brain. And then this would be what stratified squamous tissue looks like. So you can see it's multiple layers. This would be in the vagina. This is for protection of abrasion, especially during childbirth. These tissues have to be able to be sloughed off so that we don't damage the underlying structures. And when something is keratinized, you've probably all seen or heard keratin. It's a very popular beauty treatment that people put on their hair. Anyone heard of that? Anyway, so it's what it is. It's keratin. It's keratinized is a I don't know how to describe what it is. It's sort of a little harder shell. It gives a little bit harder shell to the epithelium. Would be the best way to describe when something is keratinized. So something can be keratinized like the superficial layers of the skin. So we have a little bit more protection, a little tougher. Non-keratinized would be there's no keratin. And we would see that in these regions of the body. And then we have stratified cuboidal. Protection, limited secretion and absorption, and ducts of sweat glands and esophageal glands and the male urethra. So you can see here this stratified layer of epithelium, the lumen, and this is in the esophagus. Okay, in the esophageal, duct of the esophageal gland. Okay, so this is a duct of a gland in the esophagus. So what is important is what is important for you to be getting from these slides is types of epithelia, stratified, simple. You should get so that you're real familiar. Stratified epithelia. I'm not going to. It's not going to be so much. Oh, was that pancreatic gland? Where is that pancreatic gland? No. What I want you to get is just this cellular structure, this general large structure. Is everyone sort of clear with that?
Do you want us to know like where to find them in the body?
Well, we're going to probably get some of that as we're working through the semester. We'll be bringing that up as we're talking about these organs. You could get kind of a general idea of where they are in the body is probably good. Like what these
epithelium is going to be in your lungs type thing?
Yeah. Like if I said simple, squamous, one job of simple squamous is diffusion. So that would be, and where would you find that? You know, the linings of the lung, the capillary beds, that sort of thing. So that's kind of to just kind of give a general understanding. We haven't even studied these organs. So we're just looking at cell types right now. Okay, so stratified columnar epithelium. So you can, and also what I want you to understand is you see how these terms are just being recycled, we're combining them in different ways, and then that's giving us a very clear description of what we're looking at. That's really the big take-home message that I want you to have. So stratified columnar, protection, secretion. It lines part of the urethra. This is the urethra. Who knows what the urethra is?
It's the tube that we urinate.
Right, so we have the ureter, goes from the kidney to the bladder, but then the bladder to the outside world is the urethra. And so this is lining the urethra. And these large excretory ducts. And then transitional, and this is, I think, I don't know wherever it is, but they only ever say it's in the bladder. All the textbooks I've looked at, they just say, oh, transitional's in the bladder. So that might be something to kind of understand, and you see how if you were looking at this in a microscope, here would be the nuclei, and so you can see that, well, it's like, wow, okay, the apical surface kind of has a little bit of a flat look to it. But then you look at the rest of it and it's kind of messy looking. It's like, how do you classify that? So it's classified as transitional, and it's in the bladder. And it allows for stretching. Now a lot of our organs stretch, but the bladder really stretches. And so then this is, again, pseudo-stratified. So it looks like it's stratified, but it isn't really. Here, let's find everything. Here's the basement membrane. Here's some connective tissue. I don't see the blood vessels, but we know they're there. And so we're going to be, here's some goblet cells. These are goblet cells. So here we're seeing this, these nucleus. Now this one, we can see part of it here, but I can't really see, there's another one on top. This one, you just kind of have to, if you look close, I shouldn't touch this, it starts moving. But if you look closely at it, you can kind of see how those cells look like they're layered, but they're really not. Can you kind of see how that's kind of a pseudo look to it? And of course, this one is ciliated. Does it say what this is? Oh, tracheal. This is from the trachea. So again, this would be an important place to have cilia, so that the air that we breathe is cleaned and moisturized and heated. And we need a lot of mucus in the goblet cells. Okay, so these are just some micrographs with an artist drawing next to the image so that you can see a little bit more, clearly what they would look like. So cuboidal cells, the basement membrane. Where's that apical surface? What is the apical surface again? That's the free surface. There's always a free surface. Epithelia, it covers things. So there's always going to be a free surface because it's covering things. But you have to remember that the inside of our intestines is really the outside world. So it's covering that. Does that make sense to you guys? All right. And so we can see these and connective tissue and the basement membrane, the blood vessels. Here would be a stratified cuboidal and a sweat gland inside your skin. And here would be the duct. There is a duct. This is a gland, a sweat gland, so there's going to have to be a duct. We might not see it very clearly, but it's definitely there. I was going to ask you, is this stratified or simple? But it already says that. It's stratified. And here's some more pictures of different types. Here's an empty bladder and a full bladder. Oh, good. We get to see this transitional epithelium. So here is the empty bladder. And you can see everything's kind of all nicely packed, and then as it gets full and stretches out again. So you can see why it would be called transitional, even stretched out. It's just, you can't really easily classify this as, you wouldn't want to say, it's not really columnar, it's not, because look, this one comes all the way down.